Hello, this is Aristotle Galanis, and you're listening to Music Mongrels. This is Music Mongrels, the third installment, and I'm here with Richard Foreman. How's your day been, Rich?
It's been pretty good.
Been pretty good. Have you been heard any good new music or thought of any
Well, I
music
haven't
things?
heard anything new
No,
the last couple of days.
no.
I mean, it's been pretty much on a huge Stones kick.
Stones kick.
Yeah, I'm
What-
trying
what's
to. No pun intended. I'm trying to break on through to the other side, and
Right.
'cause Halloween's coming up.
Right.
Start listening to the music that makes me happiest this time of year, and
Mm-hmm.
more goth and things of that nature. But
Yep.
I don't know. I guess the weather's been too good.
Yeah, I guess so, man. I don't know, man. Like, with, records and stuff, it really depends because some records you can listen to, over and over and stuff, because it has such a renewable quality, like the Stones, you think about new things.
Definitely. I mean, there's always. I never understood people that didn't have something to return to when it comes to music.
Right.
And, it's like you sort of imagine a kid making a pillow fort out of a couch.
I think that's the difference in movies.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I mean, movies could, I suppose, do the same thing, but there's something about music where it just allows your mind to form, you know, images or
Mhm.
connect with
Right.
what you were doing or what you were living at that time. And
I feel like that's why some movies aren't as good because with doing that because they sometimes seem like they want to capture reality so well that it's kind of just really on the nose
no, definitely.
to where it's like there's nothing open for interpretation. It's just like, oh yeah, this is just my life. Why am I gonna want to watch my life? It's
Well,
reality TV.
not only that, it's sometimes there's just no magic.
Right.
I mean, when we live our lives daily, we create, we have those moments where we experience something that has that memorable moment. It's the
Mhm.
magic of memory. And,
Right.
film is putting that on celluloid if you think about it. So
Mhm.
when you try, like you're saying, when you try too hard, it's not going to look like the magic of that moment at all.
Right.
And
Well,
because
it's a
that's not
certain
how
thing of
memory
leaping
works.
that onto the screen, or into music, where you want it to be abstract to an extent, but it's also you could decipher it too, and have it mean something for the individual listener.
No, definitely, and it's a shame, really, because especially in the last few years with the rock biopics.
Right.
I mean, they've been really divisive. Some people really love some of them. Some people don't. Some people enjoy, like the Elton John one, for example. It's
Right.
basically a bunch of music videos, is what it amounts to.
Mhm.
Some people really love that free form feel. Other people really wanted a biopic, and even though it's difficult to judge a market at times, I think that it doesn't make a lot of sense that, for that one example, they didn't give people what they want and then create unique
Mhm.
videos, to put out as
Right.
partly a marketing tool. I mean, because everything is a business at some level, but it's still based around art. So why not let people have both?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that's
Mhm.
actually why I think I enjoy a lot of your work.
Thanks.
To reference you, is that you give people music, you
Mhm.
give a collection of music as an
Right.
album, but you also find the wherewithal to escape reality with your
Mhm.
video segments or the different
Right.
production.
Or
And
the different experimental albums or things like that, or
exactly.
live albums, and you could put your those things are more literal in a way. Well, some of them are, at least, like the live albums. But even those, there's a certain quirkiness to it, like the live at Paul Henry's. Is it actually only 10 people in the audience, or is it 30 people, or is it 100 people? Or with Hessel Diner, is that real? Is it not? Is it, that sort of thing?
Well, exactly. And I mean, speaking of memory, going back to that,
Uh
when
huh.
talking about music, I think that's, at least for me, the joy of growing up, in the early '80s and
Right.
late '70s, is that you know, music really took a leap away from
Yeah.
what everybody had just got done experiencing. This
Mhm.
more, you know, the hippie movement and
Right.
you know the beat elements prior to that. It felt like there was just experimentation, even when
Mhm.
things were very familiar or nodding back to even an older time period in the 50s, you
Mhm.
know, in the early rock and roll. Is that you know it wasn't as simple as labeling something post punk or new wave or goth or something like that. It was really experimentation.
Yeah, because now
It's like
people kind of just get
collage.
into music because if it's this label or whatever,
Yeah, exactly. And
and
I
that's
mean,
what kind of sucks now. Because when people like, I'm usually kind of stubborn in terms of someone's like pick a label. I usually give something that's more of a big blanket term, not something that you can pin down. I don't say punk. I don't say garage. Even I'm just like indie or alternative or rock or
you know,
singer songwriter.
I'll admit that you know, I mean, fallen into the social habit of using some of those buzzwords or terms that
Right.
you know
Well,
are no
sometimes you
longer
have to,
that, but
for marketing and stuff.
certainly, or just lack of ability to describe it any other way.
Right.
You know, failing on my part, I suppose. But you know, at the same time, you know, when did we start paying attention to that?
Right.
You know, I mean,
I
I
think when
don't.
money became more involved, like when it went from people just trying to sell to the composers or trying to sell their music, pieces and stuff. Then to when you started trying to sell to all these individual markets, in the 20th century.
It just seems strange too, because I mean, definitely in the early to mid '90s with the quote unquote grunge scene,
Right.
you know, you have the same thing. But I guess what I'm saying is like coming of age and all
Mhm.
those bands and you know the marketing that goes with that, posters and you know concerts and all that stuff.
Right.
Like I never really thought of the music as grunge. You know, I didn't
Right.
pick it up because somebody said it's a new grunge act.
Right.
I just liked what I heard.
Mhm.
You know, and I mean, of course, now post grunge movement, right?
Mhm.
Everybody debates what was or wasn't grunge, and it's
I feel
like,
like there's a mix of dynamics in music now. Like it's just heavy lyrics, heavy music. It's not
yeah,
heavy
I think
lyrics and
that I personally am tired of that.
right.
I mean, we all, I think everybody in this area, not that it's only this area, but you know, anywhere that's around a major urban hub,
Right.
certainly has its hardcore scene, you
Right.
know, all that, and it's just
It's redundant.
it is. It's like a washing machine, you know. I
Right.
mean, how many times can you try to reinvent the same three riffs?
Right.
And I mean, we all have to start somewhere. I mean, I think everybody's had
Well,
a
it's not even the
moment in a
problem
hardcore
all the
band.
time. It's kind of that it's not really a matter of the same chords. It's a matter of that it's the same style over and over. Because I mean, I use a lot of the same chords a lot of the time. I'm sure you like a lot of music that does that. I mean, the
No,
Stones do
absolutely.
that.
Say they do it. Yeah.
But they do different styles with those chords. They could do this chord with the same song, the songs with the same chords, two songs like that. But one could be reggae, one could be punk.
Well, exactly. And I mean, that's.
Right.
I guess that's where creativity in the musician comes in. Is that the openness to experiment with a sound or with
Mhm.
you know a tone and keep going forward and stretching limits, or even if it's more traditionally based, just
Right.
having the wherewithal to go there on an album. You know, we were discussing a couple days ago about you know songs that don't seem to fit in on their albums.
Right.
You know some of the songs on Some Girls doesn't fit the newer sound, and it's like
Mhm.
okay, so it's is it something that stands out in a good way or a bad way? But you know,
Well, then you have albums like Exile on Main Street that, they're a hodgepodge, but that's the vibe they want.
exactly. And I mean, you just don't find that in a lot of.
Right.
And again, forget just even labeling it hardcore. Is that where are the bands willing to just do something? You know, everybody wants attention. Everybody talks about, oh, everybody gets into a band for the girls or the booze or the drugs. And well,
Right.
maybe some do, but I mean, maybe some people just want to make music,
Mhm.
and the other things arrive or a
Mhm.
scene forms around it with those things because it's actually worth seeing
Mhm.
and paying hard-earned money for. I mean, I think people have forgotten the reason why we do these things.
Mhm. Hmm.
and that kills creativity.
Right. I see your point in that, man. Like, I feel like a lot of marketing and things like that get in the way of creativity, especially if it's about the core art. It's one thing if you're trying to make a set jingle or a poster for a certain concert that doesn't necessarily warrant as much creativity or to be taken seriously. But if it's the actual art you're selling, to make that itself kind of just, I don't know, just basically like a price tag. You know?
That's true. I mean, that's it's again sort of the double-edged sword and dynamic of, to me, it really is a post-music industry world because
Mm-hmm.
here we are, we're sitting in a basement recording, and
Right.
we don't need them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just
Like
simply
before, everybody would be lined up to the nearest radio station trying to.
exactly.
Like there's been some radio stations I've tried to reach out to before about, hey, can we have an hour of time putting something on? They're like, yeah, that'll be about $500, and it's like I don't have fucking $500 to throw around, you know. To what? To like what? A market of a few thousand people that may or may not listen.
Well, it's just ironic that back in the day you had the payola scandal.
Right.
But I guess the question is, how is it even a scandal when that's how any industry
Right.
seems to work?
Capitalism.
You pay to play, and I'm not condoning it or saying
Right.
that I like it, but I mean, it's shocking to me that people will repeat the history.
Well, yeah.
And,
Well, I'd be more selective with payola, though. Like if it's a local radio station or a local TV station that, like, the reach, no one's really watching it in the grand scheme of things, and I could only pay, and it's $500. Yet I could only, if I paid $500 more to be on national television or national radio, my priorities are, I would set my priorities for that instead.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's $500 you can invest in a board or a computer or whatever.
Yeah,
and,
I could amp or whatever.
and do what you're trying to do.
Right.
And that's, I don't know, what was it, 2 years ago now? Maybe it's just been one, where Billy Corgan did that whole Let's Travel America,
Right.
like, self video.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like the theme was almost trying to justify why it's so hard to break into the industry.
Right.
And it's not that he wasn't bringing up valid points or the truth. Man, I'm going to sound like Obi-Wan here, but, it's from a certain point of view.
Right.
Like, it also shows a great lack of patience
Mm-hmm.
that, again, if we're supposed to be artists,
Mm-hmm.
as musicians,
Right.
yeah, everybody wants to make it as fast as possible.
Right.
Everybody wants to enjoy the fruits of their labor.
Mm-hmm.
But by that same merit, no other artist really makes art with that expectation, do they? Like,
Yeah, generally.
they make it until somebody notices them, and sometimes that's unfortunately after they've passed. But
Right.
it doesn't
Or
make
after
sense.
they quit their,
Yeah, or they've just they've died spiritually, if you will. They've given up and they go become a lawyer or something. But it's just
then all of a sudden everybody's asking,
yeah, sure. It's like, well, where'd you go? And I mean, I think he even briefly in some of those videos sort of got at that when some of the people would ask him a question. He opened himself up to a proverbial live mic.
Right.
But the thing is, I mean, you've made it, and you're saying this, and I can't help but feel that there's a certain level of like, oh, it's a young man's game. Well, you're not a young man, and you've made it. So it seems like it's
about?
Not only that, because he's rolling in royalties. There's no way he's not. It just seems like traditional protectionism.
Right.
Stay out of my industry because I can't, quote unquote, afford one less yacht. I mean, not saying he has a yacht, but regardless of that, it's just ridiculous, and I think that it just pisses off the established acts and the industry that people can sit here and afford pretty decent instruments and equipment, record something that, all right, yeah, this doesn't sound like Chess Records or or Shoals or the Rolling Stones mobile studio or any of those classic places, but Electric Ladyland. But I mean, the point is, you could put it out there and it could sound pretty good.
Right.
and it has the ability to get attention,
Mhm.
and I just don't think that they
Right.
want that.
Mhm.
This is what it comes down to, because it also, I mean, here we are in the midst of COVID, and
Mhm.
you could perform right down here
Yep.
with a band and
Mhm.
still have enough audio equipment
Mhm.
to make it sound good.
Right.
And doesn't that just suck when your entire industry is trying to say you can't possibly sound good without us?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of downsides.
Or you have to buy all this special equipment for that.
Exactly, and I mean, distribution, which is another topic that he touched on
Mhm.
throughout the series. Yeah, they have distribution. It helps demand money. You
Right.
know, that's great. We all want
Mhm.
that too. Again, fruits of our labors.
Right.
But at the same time, again, if we're looking at what we do as artists,
Mhm.
isn't it more important that I put it out there
Right.
and that people witness it, they're inspired by it, and they remember it?
Right.
You know, I mean, it just
Well,
doesn't
it's
make
almost
sense.
like I'll put it this way: like if you put out an album that doesn't sell, it's almost like you're investing in a I'm trying to explain it. Like you're investing in a business per se. So it's a risk. Like you could be in debt or something, or you could thrive from it, and you hope that you can make a living from it, or you make most of your money back. But then the same token, there's a possibility that you can't, and then you hope that maybe eventually maybe I'll make the money back or something like
Uh,
that, or get the appreciation.
it's funny because it almost seems to me like the record industry is a bad cross between a mob
Mhm.
and an insurance company.
Right.
You come to them to sort of like soften the personal blow of what it would cost to
Right.
do these things, or try to do it on your own, or have to
Right.
gather up people supporting you through income and all that. As
Mhm.
artists traditionally
Right.
have, right? I mean,
But then
even
they still throw
Beethoven
the
did that, but
expenses at you,
right, exactly. And then they basically
or they
never
take
want
it
to
out of your
let you.
profits.
Right, they find every reason to blame you for why you're not entitled to this,
There's a
or
lot of
it's in the
bands like that, like the
contract.
Stooges. They were getting all these nice hotels and stuff that they weren't even necessarily asking for. They gave them the option. Then lo and behold, after that came out of their all the money they made from their shows. So they were playing these decent sized festivals and stuff. But in the same token, it was like, hey, where's all of our money that we made from these shows? They're like, oh, it's the hotels we booked you in.
And it's true of, I mean, think of every major act. The Stones
Right.
got screwed.
Mhm.
Black Sabbath, screwed.
Mhm.
I mean, really, even the Beatles. I mean, there were questions about Epstein's handling of
Right.
things at moments, and I mean, again, it's not to say that any of it was illegal, or even
Mhm.
perhaps immoral, but at the end of the day, it seems like Zeppelin was the only one that managed to
Mhm.
dodge the bullet, and that's because they had a close eye on Peter Grant, and
Mhm.
they had a joint understanding of each other. I think that it was like a ship of pirates as
What about the
opposed to.
Colonel?
Yeah, I mean, I would liken him as close to a thief as any, as
Yeah.
maybe Sabbath's original manager, Sharon Osbourne's father. I mean, it's just
Right.
it's dirty pool, and
Right.
that's the thing that gets cut out here. I mean,
Mhm.
certainly bandmates can screw each other over, but
Right.
and they certainly have, but I mean, look
Mhm.
at the unequal distribution amongst the Stones, or
Right.
I mean, Zeppelin. Even they
Mhm.
didn't have equal distribution. There was
Right.
still that old money feel. I mean, John Paul Jones and John Bonham didn't get paid like Plant
Yep.
and Page, and it showed. And there was a rift in the band at some level
Mhm.
because of that. And I mean, as much as one can question the veracity of Richard Cole,
Mhm.
I mean, I'd have to say that some of his claims over the years, even though everybody denies it, doesn't
Mhm.
mean that he wasn't telling the truth about some of the
Right.
things that came out of all their mouths. I
That's
mean, it's
true.
just these are the things that to me should have been focused on in that road trip
Right.
video. But I think the reason he avoided it is because there are
Mhm.
giant rifts
Right.
in former members of that band. I mean, it's the truth about the music, business is that
Mhm.
it is a business,
Right.
as opposed to the art or craft of making the
Yeah.
music that happens to go on some labels print. You know,
Mhm.
it really, again, is unlike
Mhm.
anything other than the film industry. I mean, you know,
Right.
painters don't go through this.
Mhm.
You know, most live performers don't go through this.
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself how much of it is just, you know, it's just like voting. You know, it's
Mhm.
like how much of this is actually your own fault because
Mhm.
you didn't get on top of it. And that doesn't mean
Exactly.
lawyering up. It means just saying what you want and
Yeah.
holding people to it.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
it's
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's a big problem. You know, I don't think it will ever change really for a while.
no, I don't think. I think that's just it. I mean, the damage is
And
sort
I think
of
that's
laid
also a
down.
result too of why you don't have some type of eclectic rock stuff that's popular now or any good stuff coming out because they just pick kind of they don't even because I feel like a lot of the people that become popular now aren't even by chance. It's more like whoever has the most money. It's like survival of the fittest, I guess,
Well, look at what just
or the
came down the
richest.
pipeline. Like what was it? Maybe it was today and earlier today,
Mhm.
as a matter of fact. You know, oh, ACDC's back together. Well, I mean, is that relevant?
Right.
Who the who the hell cares?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you've got people who didn't
Besides the
care.
disc jockey.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it's that media pump. You know, it's the industry.
Right.
They're back. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's an age difference between us, but I mean, as much as I love ACDC, I haven't loved ACDC since Back in Black.
Right.
Like, who are you selling this to?
Yeah.
Who the hell cares? I mean, they've got so much money that they could probably put their own record out from a studio. Most of these guys have their own home studio.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. If I were in their position, I wouldn't be part of a record industry.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't need them.
Mhm.
And that's the irony is that, I mean, it's too piratical.
Well, I feel like the rock world is panicking because a lot of their big dogs or whatever fat cats are, as far as the performers are dying out.
No, and literally, I mean, you
Yeah.
know, just yesterday we lost Eddie Van Halen, and as
Right.
amazing of a guitarist as he, you know, was,
Mhm.
'cause he's now deceased. I mean, you know, at the same time, up until his death,
Mhm.
where were all these people singing the praises of Eddie Van Halen?
Right.
I mean, you know, and that's true again of anything, movies or art or whatever. But
Mhm.
at the same time, you know, it's not like anybody's really going to forget Eddie Van Halen anyhow. I mean,
Right.
it's sort of already the star is already up in the sky even before
Right.
they die. So where's the necessity of the pump?
Right.
You know, how much more are you gonna make on that pump that he's dead? Go buy a record that came out in 1978.
Yeah.
It's like I already bought that record
Mhm.
in 1985.
Right.
You know, like I don't need another copy.
Right.
You know, I mean, like maybe
Yeah.
for Christmas or stuff, I'll get
Yeah.
you a copy of Van Halen one. But you know, it's
Yeah.
like it's stupid.
Yeah.
They're missing out.
It's not even anything new. Sometimes it's not even demos. Sometimes it's remastered.
Yeah, I think both of us can attest the rip-off that most remasters are. And
Right.
it's fascinating. I'll tell a personal story. I mean, as you know, I have a relatively vast collection.
Because no one complains because people sometimes can't even tell the difference, or it's like a placebo thing.
No, it very much is. And
Like, oh, I hear that. Like,
yeah,
I hear
exactly,
that. 'Cause
exactly.
I haven't heard it in 40 years, so yeah, I hear those drums.
Well, no, that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
I haven't heard something in 40 years. All of a sudden, that nostalgia of putting the record comes on, and because there are differences in the recording
Mhm.
as it's being presented, whatever that is, for better or worse, they're lost in the mists of nostalgia.
Right.
And you know, because I mean, your brain is like on drugs in that moment.
Right.
You know, literally, like the same chemical reaction.
Mhm.
I could hear all this new stuff.
Supposedly.
Yeah, exactly. No, you can't.
Yeah.
I'll go get the record. You know, we'll use the Goat's Head Soup remaster. It just came out.
Yeah. I think that was actually decent though.
It doesn't have to be bad.
Yeah.
But like you said, placebo effect. Oh man, I can hear the drums. Here, let me go get the record from 1970, whatever, 4 or 2,
Right.
whatever it was. Like, there are the drums there too.
Yeah.
You just forgot.
Right.
Is all it comes. You didn't really forget because the nostalgia's there, but you forgot. It's
Mhm.
like Peter Pan, right?
Yeah.
You know, like in Hook. You know, he forgot his happy thoughts, and then he remembers and he's flying.
Right.
It's But they'd rather pump money into that
Mm-hmm.
than just find another band and have that band's popularity say, well, who are your influences?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
There's another connection to get them in there.
Yeah.
They came to the record store for one, and they're gonna buy the other one too, because that band loved that band,
Right.
and that's certainly how I remember growing up.
Right.
I'm not trying to sound like an old man, but it's
Mm-hmm.
again like I don't understand the shift in the dynamic.
Right.
It's just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Just
No, I agree.
I don't need another copy of Ghost.
Well, I feel like now it's not based off of like how talented the musicians are, the songwriters are. Now it's kind of like a certain aesthetic that's the flavor of the month.
Oh, absolutely, and I mean,
Whether if it's the '90s or 2000s.
absolutely, and I mean, look at the local
They're
scene.
so fast to make everything nostalgic. I kind of noticed like if there's all of a sudden now there's playlists right away like 2010 music or something. It's like, didn't we just get done with that? Aren't we practically still in that?
No, exactly.
It's
I mean,
like
we're only
everything else.
in 2020 at that point.
Right.
It's 10 years. I mean, yeah, music can change a lot in 10 years.
Supposedly, but
But do I need to hear that?
right.
And to
It's one thing to have '50s stuff nostalgic, but because it seems like it's almost like marketers only have room to be nostalgic for like 4 decades, and they throw a really old one out the window. Like, at some point, probably in the '70s, there were still like 30s compilations you could buy and stuff. Now you'd have to scrounge for that.
and I have no doubt, because I mean, look at one of your favorite artists, the Kinks, right?
Right.
Or the Beatles.
Yeah.
They were constantly referring back to
Right.
20s.
It's like how people now
30s,
refer to the '80s or '90s.
Exactly. I mean,
2010s.
and yet you wouldn't know a single thing probably unless
Yeah.
I mean, you're a fan, so you would. But I
Yeah.
mean, the casual listener's not going to know what the Davies brothers are referencing, or
Right.
Paul McCartney and John Lennon, who
Mhm.
well, it's just some old time music.
Well, and then the thing too is like now sometimes with bands, like if you listen to some newest band from Lollapalooza or whatever, you might be too dumb to really, or you might know Led Zeppelin, but you might only know like one song, so you could hear them doing a song that sounds like Kashmir, and you only know Stairway to Heaven, so you're hearing the song that's basically a updated version of Kashmir, and you're like, wow, this is amazing, this is original and all that, but you're like, wait, did this band, there were more interesting lyrics or more thought-provoking lyrics, and they had better production, all that stuff. Why are you holding this band to a pedestal? Is it just because it's in your generation?
And I think that's a large possibility. And I think that the irony is, because I mean, certainly in the kind of culture we live in currently,
Right.
it's like, let's go back and find everything wrong that the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and Cream did,
Right.
in appropriating this music, the blues.
Mm-hmm.
And some of what they did was wrong, and they've
Right.
either been caught legally and had to pay royalties
Right.
and change writing credits and whatnot, or they haven't, but we all know it. The cat's out of the bag.
Right.
By that same merit, look at the differences
Mm-hmm.
between what in some cases, they stole, but look at the differences.
Right.
They added a lot, and they created a genre.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, forget the law for a second.
Yeah.
Somebody did something there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure we could say the same thing, and going back to your point about an aesthetic
Right.
of a lot of these other bands.
Mm-hmm.
That we can't even name, because it starts to become quite difficult to tell the difference
Right.
between one and the other.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm thinking of The Simpsons right now. Abe Simpson coming in, and
Yeah.
Barney and Homer rocking out in front of the mirror, and it's like, I used to be with it. It's like, yeah, okay, well, even at this age, we're going through that.
Yeah, and
but-
it's like at this point, like I'd rather listen to Rolling Stones bootleg or something, or fucking, going older than that, like I don't know, like some fucking Buddy Holly, like watch a Buddy Holly documentary or something. Like it's just because now with the select genres I like and stuff, that those genres, they haven't been updated, they haven't been really, for the most part. There's no, and the thing is, the style doesn't even necessarily have to be updated to an extent, but there's no interesting songwriting going on now.
Well, exactly, because it's almost like, to use Warhol as an example.
Right.
it's a carbon copy of a carbon copy of a carbon copy. And
Right.
while the images are different,
It's like with
it's the same thing.
perfect example that it always goes over a lot of my age's head is a lot of the emo or pop punk artists. It's like that's like second hand because it went from let's see, who's the example. Let's start with the Damned or something, or
Yeah.
goth emotion, not necessarily emo, but okay. So let's start with the Damned, then let's go to the Cure, then let's go to what's the band after that? Depeche Mode or something, and then let's go to Blink 182, those pop punk bands, and then let's go to fucking the Killers, and like all these kind of new wave punk bands or goth kind of emotional and thing, and then let's go to Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco and all that stuff. So I mean, how many times is this like a
And the thing is, I mean, it's fine. Everybody can have a mode of music.
right?
I mean, but there's good and there's bad, and it's just astounding that for every good act, that whether or not they sell out, whether or not they fall off,
Mm-hmm.
gets promoted accordingly. There's so many that just they're clearly plucked from the early stages of their development, their nascency
Mm-hmm.
in a scene, and then they're given all this direction from the people who want to make money off them,
Yeah.
and they go for it. And you can call it selling out, but I don't think they have, to use like a legalistic thinking, I don't think they have the motive
Right.
or intent to sell it. I think that they think, oh, we're making it,
Right.
and we're getting there, and they don't realize it until after they're labeled this,
Right.
that we suck,
Mm-hmm.
and we know we suck for a lot
Mhm.
of these
Yeah.
bands. They suck,
Right.
and they realize it's all going to come crashing down, and so
Mhm.
whatever habits they have really explode.
Well, that's why sometimes I'm more like a solo entity because I kind of, can control myself to an extent, and I have a certain amount of people I collaborate with, but you always kind of get a sense, even with a marriage. But imagine if it's a marriage with 5 people or 4
Yeah,
people.
exactly. I mean, it's
It's like, that's unrealistic to have running forever, unless it's the only way I could see you could ensure that maybe is if like, before you were a band, you were already friends for 5 years or something, and you already kind of know how you guys tolerate each other, what type of things you like, and how you guys create things.
It's really a Beatles
Yeah.
versus Stones thing in a sense, because I mean, the
Because-
Beatles certainly were friends
Right.
at some level. They all knew each other, and they were very young, and yet, I mean, they imploded.
Right.
And then you've got somebody like the Stones. I mean, again, they have their habits just as much as anybody else, but it never really threatened to break the band up. And even when they quote unquote took breaks,
Mm-hmm.
they never were really out of each other's orbits.
Right.
Like Richards and Jagger may have had a riff,
Right.
but they never really weren't around each other
Yeah.
at some level.
Mhm.
It was always coming back, and whether or not any of it was good afterward.
Well, that's how I feel with a lot of my collaborators for the most part. Like, not we never really have riffs, but as far as whether they get busy with something, I could always kind of know the next time they have an opening, we can collaborate somehow.
And I think that again is the wonder of the home recording is that
Hey, just come by, let's hang out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not threatening. you know?
well, not only that, there's no timeline. There's no
Right.
okay, we gotta get in the studio, we gotta record this, and it's gotta be an album, and we gotta get it out. And this is what we gotta make off it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Because if you can't do something, then I'll do something, almost like that.
Well, think about artists in general.
Right.
Most of them don't really go very, respond very well
Right.
to that kind of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't. And I don't think most people do. And what's the result?
Right.
Bad art.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this album sucks. Well, maybe it's because you put all this.
Well, and sometimes you
ridiculous
can like
pressure on
guilty pleasures too.
Certainly, I mean, it's. I don't
Say
even
your
agree with
favorite
calling-
guilty pleasures are.
I wouldn't even. I'm not even really down with the term. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think that people should be able to like what they like because
Right.
they should. We're taking in information,
Right.
and especially as artists, we're taking in information and it's inspiring us. If this is what inspired you, and people like your work, they don't have to like what
Right.
inspired you. But it is where it came from. And if
Right.
you're willing to admit it, or it's just readily apparent, take the pick, what's wrong with that? You know?
Yeah, and I feel like in terms of that, the other side of the coin, when you're creating and stuff, I feel like people should be able to base art off whatever they want to. Like I feel like a lot of things are considered bad taste or whatever, or cliche if you pick something that's a trope or whatever. But it's like, why not? It's like life is a trope, life is a cliche.
Well, it is. I mean, again,
It's like, like how far do you want to go with this? You could say that, playing a guitar is cliche. You could say that writing about, losing a lover's cliche. You could go really far with it.
well, I mean, that's just it. At what point is life itself waking up in the morning?
Right.
Right.
That's
Going
when all
to
the
bed.
pretentious stuff comes in, where you make fake creatures and stuff, and that could be interesting too. It's a different element, but there's some people that are really snobs, and that's the only type of thing they like. It's like fantasy or science fiction or whatever.
I mean, I think that science fiction and fantasy fan,
Right.
but I don't know if
Well,
that
for
really
instance,
shows
I
up in
only
all my
like the
work.
devil, stuff about the devil, or I only like stuff about, you know, this, Hobbit or something.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, I know what you're saying. There are people that really, really lock themselves down to only very specific
Things.
aspects of a genre, and I mean, that's unfortunate because again, you're not allowing yourself
Right.
the freedom. And I mean, we do live in America, and I mean, we live in the 21st century, and I think that's the interesting thing is that people are so about denial
Right.
for themselves. It doesn't mean that everything should be wanton. We don't have any restraint or anything
Right.
of that nature, but it's just people are afraid to just be them.
Right.
And I find that immensely sad.
I feel like that's why people like me and you, sometimes it's harder to get together with a certain bigger group because we're not really afraid to be ourselves in terms of artists.
Exactly. It definitely. I think it definitely for anybody who's not afraid to be themselves. I think that everybody makes a choice when they put themselves through the front door, right? Proverbially,
Right.
they decide who they want to be.
Well, this is kind of like to tie in with, not to plug one of my albums coming up, but with Mongrel in the middle.
Not to.
Not to
Aristotle
tie.
Galanos
Check out
is now
Mongrel
going
in the
to
Middle.
plug an album. Everybody
Yeah.
sit back and relax.
Yeah. But with Mongrel in the middle, it's like about having like life is just a compromise. It's compromise for different
And
things.
everything is a compromise, but one thing that shouldn't be at least wholeheartedly compromised, and again, people should be independent.
Right.
And they should be tolerant. I think beyond that point is that
Right.
if you want to be you, then you shouldn't be afraid to be okay with somebody else
Right.
who isn't you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the goth and the hippie and
Right.
the punk rocker and
Right.
the classical guy should all be able to walk into a room
Mm-hmm.
and just be cool with each other.
That's what me and Moises were talking about the other day. Like the positive sides of our group is that we can have someone that's into video games and someone that's into poetry, someone that's into punk rock, someone that's into folk rock, and we could all get along to an extent. We could whether if it's through humor or through just kind of coming up with ideas or videos or whatever.
Absolutely, and additionally, I just
Or
think
just
that
some random lawyer off the street, get along.
it happens like a song, but it's
Yeah.
I mean, but that that's just sort of it. Is that I feel like people are afraid to make connections because they've been
Right.
taught that anything that goes outside of a certain group or a certain base of something means that it's a problem and it's going to deny them something.
Right.
And I just don't think it's a choice. It's a choice, and we don't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, again, we're in an election year, and it's astounding to me how people don't even want to talk to each other.
Right.
And yeah, some of the differences of opinions are both stark and
Right.
frightening, but the minute you put that wall up or shut the door,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying that no one should ever do that. I don't think it's realistic. I mean,
Right.
at some point you have to, but that point to me is much farther down the road than so many people do.
Right.
There's just no element of either forgiveness
Mhm.
or tolerance or even allowing somebody to grow. You know, I mean, when people talk about raising kids,
Mhm.
right, and kids hit an adolescent state, or even early adulthood in general,
Mhm.
the best way to approach the things that I mean, a parent may not like what their kid is getting into, but
Right.
the more you harp on it, or the more you want to nag,
Mhm.
the more they're gonna get into it.
Right.
Like, you don't have to clap your hands for it, but you probably should treat them the way you always treated them,
Right.
and allow them the space to grow or
Mhm.
connect. And I think that that's true with friendships too.
Right.
Like, people don't allow each other the freedom to change
Mhm.
or grow or even just have a bad night.
Mhm.
Again, everything's in context. And, oh, you killed somebody yesterday. That's all right.
Yeah.
Hang out and get a beer tomorrow. I mean, maybe that's good for you. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
good for most people, but I mean,
I was saving that.
oh, sounds like somebody got it on tapper.
Uh-huh.
But is that so wrong?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to something as simple as musical taste,
Mhm.
it's sort of pathetic.
Yeah. It is pathetic.
I mean, I for one, I mean, what got me into all of you, is just the fact that you all are so different.
Yeah.
This group has so many different outlets besides when, Brett sits down at a drum set,
Mhm.
or, whoever happens to stop by and play drums
Mhm.
that day. That's sort of
That guy named Jonathan, who's a good drummer.
uh, no, but, I mean, anything. I mean, even I've played a bass track or
Right.
two. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just,
pretty good.
it's just, it's one of those things where that's
Yeah.
that's
Did you
the
like 50
joy.
takes? So,
Yeah. 52.
52, yeah.
One for every week of the
11.
year. But, it's just, I don't know. Like, I don't understand people that want to deny themselves opportunity
Right.
for the sake of posterity. It's just-
Exactly.
it's stupid.
Mhm. So, do you have any closing arguments? This is your final 2 minutes.
Well, for rebuttal, I'd like to state that the closets are over.
Why? Rated?
Oh no, because now you guys are going to become the cross spaces.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Going in new and wonderful directions.
Wow.
No, I mean, seriously though, I mean, I don't know. I just think that, as we approach a new year, I think everybody should maybe find it within themselves to turn off a television, turn off a radio,
Mhm.
uh, shut down some social media,
Mhm.
and try picking up some of the things that got them into life in the
Mhm.
first place, and try to let themselves do a reset
Right.
and try to remember who they are.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of people have found themselves intertwined, not just politically, but just in general,
Right.
with things that have nothing to do with who they are inside.
Mhm.
And, I think that kills more than a virus,
Right.
to be quite honest. I
Mhm.
think that the greatest threat to our society is detachment from each other.
Right.
And I think that this situation proves that. So,
Mhm.
technology isn't evil, but
Yeah.
people can be.
Yeah.
And I think
Then when there's
that,
too many evil people and too many
and
mob mentality.
exactly, it's the
Yeah.
evil of the mob. Like, just everybody needs to sit down and remember who they are again,
Right.
and try to get up on January 1st and just be different.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
that's all I have to say.
Or even be different October 8th.
Well, that would be great. I mean,
Yeah.
let's start today, right?
Right.
The old Gorilla Biscuit song.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you, Your Honor.
No problemo.